Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. We are so excited to be here with another episode of Maria and Friends with our guest, Coach Smiley. Yay! So let's go ahead and get started because we have so much to talk about, but we're glad you are here. And if you're joining us on Facebook, welcome. Thank you for being here. And remember, we're going to post these. These are going to be available on YouTube. So make sure you like, you share, your comment. Let us know where you're listening from. If you have questions, go ahead and do that too. So let's go ahead and get started. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Maria and Friends, the podcast where we dive deep into the topic that brings us closer to our authentic selves and to each other. I'm your host, Maria, and today we have a wonderful guest who's here to talk about grief during the holidays, a very important subject, and how we can keep those our spirits lifted up, and there's things that we can do for us and those who we love. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to share a quick disclaimer. Maria and Friends is a space where we share personal experiences, stories, and insights. We're not professionals. I'm not professional giving advice. We're just here to share what has worked for us in the hopes that it might resonate with you somehow, and that you might just receive some of this information that might help you. And with that said, welcome back. I'm your host, Maria, and today we have the wonderful guest. Our guest is Miss Smilie Filomeno Rodriguez, MSW. Smilie is a powerhouse in the empowerment world, and she brings so much joy and authenticity to everything she does. She's the founder and CEO of Smilie Empowerment LLC, a Latina life coach, motivational speaker, host of the Smilie Empowerment podcast, and a content creator. So welcome back, Miss Smilie. This is the third time.
Third
Yay!
time. It's such a pleasure. Thank you, Maria, for having me once again. This is my third time visiting. What an amazing platform you have, amazing podcast. And I want to thank you and your viewers and your community, as well as my community, the Smiley Empowerment community, that I know that they're watching. And this is great. And this topic today, I'll let you introduce it in a little bit. This topic is very dear to my heart because my husband and I, we are currently grieving the loss of a significant person in the family just a few months ago, as well as last year. So not only am I a professional, I'm also a bereavement specialist, as well as a mental health professional and life coach, but I'm also a human being that's grieving, and grieving can look like this.
Wow.
So we'll talk more about it.
So thank you so much for being here with us. And one of the reasons, and let me give you a little bit of insight. One of the reasons why I asked for you specifically is exactly for that, because in our conversations, I realized that you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience, that you have a lot to share. So how this came about is that a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to someone, and she began to explain how she's grieving, the loss of this loved one, and how difficult the holidays were going to be. And so she went and started saying, you know, this and that, and how I feel. And I felt myself not knowing what to say because I haven't gone through
Mm,
that. And I did not want to say the wrong thing. I did not want to say something that would offend. But at the same time, I wanted to show comfort. I wanted to show my support in that. And I thought this is something we need to talk about, because we like to talk about all the positive things and everything of the holidays. But there's also people that are currently grieving during the holidays. And I think that is important to hear from someone that has gone through it, that is going through it, that it's okay, that it's going to be okay, that there is a process to it, that you're going to be okay through this, and maybe give some
absolutely.
ideas or something, just the fact that we can acknowledge that we are going through that, and that it's okay to grieve during the holidays. So and I
Yeah.
have a few questions. I have a few questions to go ahead and get it started. So I know this is, like you said, this is a very deep subject, but we're gonna address it honorably and with the most positive attitude, and in the hopes that something resonates with somebody. So the first question is, why do the holidays often intensify feelings of grief, and how can someone prepare for these emotions in advance?
Yes, that's wow. It's a difficult subject matter. And before I get into answering the question, I'm not here, a disclaimer, as a therapist, I do have professional background in the mental health field and even in grieving. However, what I share with you today is something for suggestions as well as Maria. And also, I want to offer a trigger warning that if this is triggering for you, especially if you're grieving, and it doesn't matter if you're grieving 8 years, a decade, or just last week, if at any point during this interview you feel so triggered that you don't feel comfortable, I would ask that you see this at another time because I want you to be safe. As well as if you still feel that you can be during this live, if you can still be with us and you would like to ask a question or just share something, I'm here to support you, Maria, as well. But especially if you feel like you can't handle what we're talking about, or if feelings are coming up and you can't, then maybe I would ask that you see this at another time. It will be on replay. And if you feel that you can still handle it, it's okay to shed tears. It's okay for us to, if at any point we get emotional, but I want to make sure that you're safe and anyone who's in the room that's listening.
Wonderful, wonderful. So,
Yes.
yes. So,
So
like,
question you were
yes,
saying?
the question, I'll say it again. Why do the holidays often intensify feelings of grief? And how can someone prepare in advance for these emotions?
So during the holiday season, it specifically it intensifies because if we think about that loved one as well as our pets, I have to say that too. Oftentimes we leave out that,
Yeah.
you may have a loss of a pet, and that's could be can be just as intense as a family member, human being. Whenever you're grieving and the holidays come in, we have to understand that grieving is such a multifaceted response to loss, right? Particularly when it's death of a significant person or a pet, and it alters and changes your life because now this person or your pet is no longer physically here. So all of these ranges of emotions will start to surface, right? However, during the holiday season, what happens? You miss them the most.
Yes.
Why? Because they were part of your life, right? And even if you were not in the same country with them, and maybe your holidays, you would fly out to them or you FaceTime or anything like that, they're still were here with you. So during the holiday, it's a remembrance of the absence of that person. So oftentimes, especially in the first years of an anniversary of a loved one or a pet loss, it could be very hard to do because that chair is empty. You're not purchasing the gift for that person or for your pet. They're not in the home when you used to dress them up. There's
Yeah.
so many rituals and things that we do and things that we do with this person or a pet that when they're no longer here, as well as I'm going to share this, you didn't ask this but it comes to mind, when there's anticipatory grief, which is you're already grieving a loved one that's already with you, but they are terminally ill. Grieving starts before that, before they
Oh,
actually
wow.
part. So you
Oh,
may have holidays with a person who's in hospice, in a hospital. You can have a person who's in the home, but they're bedridden and they're already right in their final stage of life. And at that point, you're also grieving. The holidays is not the same, right? So it's so important to honor your feelings, process them little by little. And when you asked me about how can you prepare, I can offer some guidance, but I don't even think we're ever prepared, right,
that's
for the
right.
loss completely. However, there are steps that we can take. I know that remember, we were sharing my sister friend who passed away 8 years ago. She had cancer for 5 years, and the last year I think was much more of the deterioration, but we were already grieving her, right, the change in her behavior, the change in that we couldn't go out the way we used to because her health deteriorated so much. She then became that she had to be in a wheelchair because her legs were weak. Now my sister that we used to do so many things together, before even a year or two before her
Wow.
death, I was already grieving because now the relationship changed, the dynamic changed. So in preparation for that, I had to do a lot of work on myself with writing, sharing my emotions. And for the holiday, as you're already grieving, if the person already has passed and you know that the holidays are coming in. One thing with the holidays is that we know when is it on the calendar,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you know when it's Christmas if you celebrate it, or their birthday. So in advance, know that it's going to be difficult. So in your circle, whoever's in your circle that you can lean on, say, this time is coming around. You may notice that I may not participate in some of the family gatherings. Please don't, let me know. I mean, please give me that room and space. Have clear conversations, because Maria, there's different sets of families that, and the within the family unit, they process grief differently. I've known families
Yes.
that their person have passed and it's a celebration of life, and they do
Wow.
parties with music, and they're just having this festivity. Then there
Wow.
are other individuals and families that even the first few years, they're like, I don't want to celebrate right now. I don't want music. I don't want to do the things that we did. And we have to respect that. So
Mhm.
prepare yourself by giving yourself the room
Yes.
to understand that when this happens, whether it's in preparation for the loss or it already happened, give yourself the time and the grace to process your feelings. And there's not one right answer. I have to say that I've worked before in counseling people that have grief, and I have received grief counseling myself. And from one moment to another, a person that's grieving may not know what they want. So when we say, call me of anything, let me know how I can help. A
Yeah.
person who's grieving sometimes don't even know what they want, because what they really do want is for that person to be here or that pet.
Wow.
So for us who are outside of that or within the unit, we have to understand that everybody grieves differently. So in preparing for the holidays, just know that it's going to be tough. Understand that you may not want to participate in the regular rituals, and that's okay. Give yourself grace. You may never heal from this loss, right? However, the intensity of the loss can, with time, you learn to live without them, right? And you also may not have it as intense. And then again, 3 years can pass and the intensity could come back again. That's why
Wow.
this is a process that we have to, it's a range of emotions that and thoughts and behaviors. And you may even feel different physical sensations. So there's so much to grief. There's so many layers to it. So that's why when you said prepare, as much as that word, someone can say, how do you prepare? Because it's very hard.
Right.
But
Right.
taking those steps, having those honest conversations with people that, again, people that you can, we talk about the heart, have conversations with people that can take care of your heart. Some individuals, when they're grieving, are very angry within your family unit and they don't want to talk, or they distract themselves in a way that you may not agree, right? So that's why you have to understand that every person, even though you're in the same family unit, every person grieves differently. So give yourself the grace and prepare yourself little by little for the upcoming holiday. Decide what you want to do, right? It's your
Correct.
decision. Do you want to participate? Maybe with the family. I know you're going to ask about that later on, about what can you do. So I'll let you when you get to that point, because I have some ideas that I can share that can
Wow.
be very meaningful, but yet you still have to know, do you want to partake in those meaningful activities with the family? Some families become closer after the passing of a loved one or a pet, and there are some family dynamics that they become more apart due to the grief, the loss, and also there could be already family tension and different dynamics there.
What do you say? Let me go back a little bit to that because I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned pets, and that makes me happy because I'm a pet lover. I love dogs, love dogs, and I've had several. And the fact that you mentioned pets and you said you gave them space to include them in the grief, I was like, oh, you see, that's why I like Coach Smiley. She cares. She
Thank
cares. She
you.
takes care of my heart. So, but what would you say? Like, I want you to speak to those people who don't understand why we grieve for pets, and they think it's like you not useless, not stupid, but they're like, oh, get over it. It's just a pet. Go get another one. And if you can, talk to that person that doesn't understand why we grieve for a pet, why we cry.
Yes. I have to say, and I'll be transparent, I'm grieving. We had to part ways with our family, our fur baby Bolt. that we had for 15 years. And I have
Oh,
to
sorry
let
for
you
the
guys know that,
loss.
yes, that was last year in March. And it happened all of a sudden. It wasn't like a preparation. It was like, oh, maybe something's wrong with his hip. Take him to the vet and it's over. So the next day we had to, right, part ways.
Oh,
So it was my first pet that my first pet ever, because I used to have a phobia of dogs, and Bolt rescued me. He was a rescue dog, but he rescued me. He showed me how to not have this phobia. So I was able to have a pet for
oh,
15 years after I was phobic.
wow.
Now, before I had the pet, I didn't have the understanding, and that's why I can help folks that are not there. Before I didn't have a pet in my life, right? I didn't understand what it would be to grieve of a pet till I had my own. And what I can share with you is that pets, particularly dogs as well, there's unconditional love. So you have, just as you have with a loved one that is there for you, your pet is also there for you. And that type of love is a different type of love because it's unconditional. You can be upset with your pet and your pet will still, right, be
Yeah,
there for you. You could be upset with a human and they withdraw from you. They don't spend. And I'm not saying that a pet, a dog or a pet is more than a human. That's not what I'm saying.
correct.
But for those that don't understand this dynamic, understand that the relationship between the family with that pet, they become like your family. Both for me was like my son.
Oh,
When we went to the vet and we had to part ways with him, I have never, and I know there's family members and friends that are seeing this on my side, and they know this about me. I have never wept in the way that I was weeping for Bolt and crying
wow.
outwardly. I usually am more reserved, but the pain was so much that
Wow.
it just came out. That doesn't mean I love humans more than Bolt, but Bolt was my family. It's a person, not a person. See, I think of him as a person, but he's my was my family. So if you have a friend who's grieving a pet, I would say, even if you don't have all the understanding,
Yeah,
have compassion,
that's
because
right.
that's their family member. That's
That's
someone
right.
they that's a person that, not a person, but to me Bolt was like a person, but
Yeah.
that is a significant part of their life. But I do have to say that before I had Bolt, I didn't have that level of understanding. Now I was compassionate, but I didn't have the level of understanding that I gained after having the 15-year experience and
Wow.
living with Bolt and then his passing, right? And it's all about, again, the meaningful relationship. I had a meaningful relationship with my fur baby Bolt. You see what I'm saying? He had understanding. He was able to be there for me when I had miscarriages, and he was able to
Wow.
comfort me in his own way. So now I miss that. So an example to that is that now that we're grieving a loss of a family member just a few months, the other day I was like talking out loud. I was like, "Bo, I wish you were here because he brought so much joy
Oh,
at times during 15 years." So now now Bolt's not here and I miss that. So that's part of the grief. So for those that don't understand, just the way I would say is to relate to this is just think of your own human being that you've lost. Don't compare it that one is greater than the other. Just know the love that you miss. That's the love that we miss with our pet.
wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you for
I hope
explaining
that
that.
that helps a
Yeah,
bit.
that understands. Yeah, I hope that somebody that's listening that doesn't they'll have, like you said, more compassion towards people that are grieving pets. And so
Absolutely.
the next question is, what are some practical strategies for honoring a loved one who has passed away while still engaging in in holiday traditions?
Yes, that's a good one. That's a very good question, and thank you so much. There's a lot of rituals and exercises that you can do. However, you have to be mindful that some people are not ready, right? So you
Oh,
have to, some people within the family, you can have siblings, 4 5 siblings or 2 siblings that one or two want to do this ritual, do some rituals in honor and memory of their loved one, and then you may have one sibling that's not ready to do that. So I would always say, don't impose anything that I'm going to share now. Don't
mm,
impose it on anyone. Just know that everybody grieves different and at a different pace and throughout the different stages. So, one of the things that you can do in honoring your loved one is to continue to practice what they left behind in legacy. So,
Oh,
if your father was a father that he loved to do gatherings and Thanksgiving, he loved to play a particular music, a particular song, or he was a person who played dominoes or something like that, then maybe you can do a ritual with your family, right? Where you guys gather in his honor and you play domino and you play his favorite music. For some people, that's very soothing.
nice.
That doesn't mean you're not going to cry and it's not going to be hard, but there's a comfort to that. Then you have individuals in the family that for them, that is, that makes them feel worse at the moment. They can't. So
Yeah.
just make sure that you practice rituals that you can honor the loved one and still have this connection with them, right? And with the family. You could do a memory jar, right? And
What is
write down
that?
a memory jar. You can
Uh,
do an exercise where you take a jar, right? And you write down your favorite memories or things of your loved one that they taught you. And you can
Wow.
add to the jar and then you can read them out loud together. Remember when dad used to say this? Remember what dad said with this? And it could bring you comfort and connection. So in the jar memory, you could make it something as a part even of the holiday. You get a jar, then you can have it in a table with a candle with the picture of the loved one. And in
Wow.
that jar, you can write down favorite memories, moments that you like. And then at times you guys can read them out and laugh and cry and enjoy that moment. That's like a comfort and connection. You could do it solo also. You may say, you know what, Smiley, I'm not ready to read this with everyone. So you could have the jar by yourself in your room, and that's your time where you can meditate. You could put some music, you cry it out, you write, and then you put these memories in this memory jar. You could light up a candle, right? That it's very specific for that loved one, and you can reflect on what did you love about that person? What's the legacy? Some people even use, if they go to church, they put a mass in memory of their loved one. You could write a letter. This is very healing. You could write a letter to the loved one expressing everything you feel, and then maybe you can share it out with family and friends if you would like, or just by yourself. You could create an art book where you can put pictures, putting being very creative about the pictures that you want to, the photos, the mementos. You could create a scrapbook. You can also do poetry. It's all about expressing and letting the emotions come forth. So all of these activities to get creative, you can practice them. However, you may not be ready. You may say, Smiley, that all sounds beautiful when you say it and easy, but
Yeah.
I'm not even ready
Wow.
to write or to look at. I've had people that I've counseled and also loved ones in the family who they cannot even see the photo of the loved one after the funeral and
Wow.
burial. They cannot. I know individuals who also say they don't put up pictures of people that have passed in their family. They have it in an album, but they can't put it on the walls. It brings them too much pain. And then I had other individuals that they're like, oh, I did a little section for
Yeah.
my loved one, and there's different pictures of my loved ones that have passed, and
Yeah.
that's like a memory wall, and then I put a candle. You see the difference? So you
Yeah.
have to know what you can do to honor your loved one, and you can donate in their honor. That's another thing you
Oh,
can
wow.
do. You can plant a tree or a garden that symbolizes growth and life to so there's places that you can do that as a memorial legacy, or even in your own backyard. You can do volunteer work in the name of your loved one or your pet. You see what I'm saying? It's all about you can keeping the connection, as opposed to there's other families or individuals who are like, they don't want to talk about it, don't mention the name, they don't talk about it, and that's their
Wow.
way of processing.
Wow.
So everybody is different. So some of these rituals can bring great comfort, but it's still going to be uncomfortable, and you're
Yeah.
still going to feel. And don't judge people if they're not showing. I want to share that because I've had that a lot in practice, where folks are like, I don't know what's wrong with my wife after our son passed. She doesn't cry. Does she even care? Does she forget him already? And it's just that she processed different. That's why I said at the beginning, grief can look like this.
Yes.
People often think that when somebody's grieving, they can feel it more if they have no makeup and they're in distress. And don't get me wrong, I went through a phase like that. But you could be highly functional, looking well, and still, carry your grief and have your moments in private. Not all the time, not all the time people that are grieving express it outwardly, right? And we have to be mindful of that. Okay.
And that's thank you for sharing that because that is true. I hear that a lot. Oh, pues I don't see her crying. I don't see her doing this. I don't see her losing it. She might not care. And it's exactly what you said. That I like that grief looks like this. So let's go on to the next question. How can someone set boundaries with family and friends if they're not ready to celebrate the usual way? How do you set boundaries? And you did talk a little bit about that, but is it okay to set boundaries? And what would you say?
Yes, it's definitely is highly recommended for family members, especially when they're grieving, and even outside of grieving. Boundaries are very healthy, and I want everyone to understand boundaries are not a request. So when people are setting boundaries, that's not I'm asking you permission or I want you to approve of this way. Boundaries is Maria, Smiley, as individuals, boundaries are what I am going to express to you, how I want to be treated, how I want to be respected, right? What am I going to participate, what I'm not. What I'm going to tolerate for you to express to me, what are we going to discuss? Some people don't want to discuss their family grief with other people outside. They set very particular boundaries. Now, when it comes to family in the unit and the person has passed or the pet, and there's the holidays and so many things, and you find that you don't want to participate, then I would say to be very honest and clear. You don't have to justify, you don't have to over explain your boundary, right? And that limitation. But, not but, and I would like to add, you have to be very clear on what you need for yourself and go with the boundary, with set the boundary and then enforce it. Because I've also seen within families, and I've been guilty of this, that they invite you to something I'm going to give an example. When I had multiple miscarriages, and I have my son naturally, but I tried after, and unfortunately, I miscarried many times. And I remember early on where I had friends that were, having their babies and inviting me to baby showers. There was a time that I had to decide for my own mental health and emotional well being that I wasn't going to go to the shower. I was going to send the gift, but I wasn't going to partake. Now that's strong because someone can feel like, wow, you're not going to be there, and it's their first. But I had to take care of myself with in
Yeah.
that sense, and I set the boundary. And it wasn't it wasn't me asking, is it okay? It wasn't me over explaining. It was just me saying, I'm not able to attend, and I wish you all the best, we'll celebrate later, and then sending the gift, and it's okay. Then there were other times, because I had multiple miscarriages throughout different years. So then there was another year that a good friend of ours had their baby shower, and I felt in a better place and I was able to partake in the baby shower. And during the baby shower, I did break down. I had to go to the bathroom. I cried, but I was able to be present. Well, in other years, I wasn't even able to go at all.
Wow.
So it's you knowing more about how you feel and being honest with your family and your closest friends to say, I'm not ready. And if people are judging you, because it happens,
Yeah, yeah.
they're like, but I lost him too, and I'm still going, and I'm still, but that's you. I am processing this way. And family members, usually they try to support, but I've seen within family member judgment. Sometimes people trying to force the individuals to partake in the holiday and not stay home. And I understand, because self isolation is not good to isolate for too long when you're grieving, but you have to give yourself time. And I would say, be honest with your family and friends. And some people are not going to agree with you. And some people may be disappointed. And that's why sometimes you backpedal and you say,
Yeah.
okay, okay, I'm going to go. But then you sacrifice your mental wellness. Sometimes you're in the space and you
Yes.
are very irritable. You're shut down. You don't enjoy. Now they're upset at the part. So that's why I'm saying you have to take care of yourself first. and understand that even two parents, right, that they lost their son or daughter, right, or grandkid, both parents, they may not grieve the same. There one and many parents sometimes have gotten divorced after a loss of a of their children, a child, because of that same thing. If there was tension already, it surfaces more, and then the grieving process can take a toll on relationships. So definitely be honest with your family and let them know, or your friends, what you can do and what you cannot. So I highly recommend to have the boundaries in place, figure out what you want, what you need, express it. Don't over justify, just express it, and then honor it. Because if you're the type of person that people pleasing, or you just want to, okay, I'll go, you're sacrificing yourself, and that's not fair to you. And oftentimes there are other things that come about with that are not pleasant, and then you're like, I should never had gone there. I was I in a big argument, or I was so upset I went into a panic attack, because you're forcing your body to do something that you're not ready to do yet. So
Yeah.
definitely have your clear boundaries, and self-care and self-love yourself primarily is number one.
Well, you answered the next question, which is, what advice do you have for those who feel isolated or disconnected because of their grief during the holiday season? So,
Yeah.
and you talked about, that we can't be isolated to the point where we cut everybody off, and, to try to slowly, and what, what can you tell to those people that don't understand somebody else's grief?
It's for those that don't understand other people's grief, I have to say, Maria, it's complex, because as individuals, let's put the grief aside for a minute. Okay,
Okay.
let's just put the grief aside for a minute, and then I'll engage you with the grief. But I want you to understand an individual who doesn't understand the grief. But before that, who is that individual? You may have a brother or a friend that before the grief, they're not the type of person that could be compassionate. Maybe they're not good
Oh,
communicators. Maybe your relationship with them is rocky as well, or
yeah.
their personality is that they're a little bit more stoic. They are not as expressive. Now, bring that same individual and your relationship with them. Now the loss happened, or the preparation of the loss, because some people are grieving in advance when people are terminally ill. Now you are like with these individuals that were in your life. The person already passed, and now your brother, I'm going to use an example,
Yeah.
you're leaning on him, right? However, your brother may not, it's not that he doesn't understand the grief, is that
Uh-huh.
possibly he himself has communication issues with accepting, right, what's happening.
Mhm.
Also,
Yeah.
people have their own grief, but when they see you suffering, there's individuals that they are like, Smiley, when I'm suffering, but when
Yeah.
I see my wife suffering, it breaks me down. I don't
Wow.
know what to say. I'm a mess. And then I don't want to feel that. So I try to distract her. So we have to understand that the individuals in our life, when somebody passes, or a pet, you have to understand that we still have these relationships, and everybody is different. So don't expect your brother maybe to be as affectionate, or to be understanding of everything you're feeling, because we each have to go through our own. Now, I do have to say, for those that lack a little bit of compassion, or they struggle with it, I have to say, do your best to get curious about what your loved one is going through, even if you don't have full understanding, because really, who does? I'm going to be honest with you.
Right?
Who
Right.
does? I can tell you that in my own grief, and even though that as a professional I've dealt with this, when it's come to my own, my loss of my, babies, and all that, there were times that I was unconsolable, that I didn't even understand what I was going through, even though I have the textbook knowledge, even
Correct.
though I have the experience, right? So it's very delicate. So I would say, for those that lack a little bit of compassion, or they feel like confused, educate yourself. There are many books also. There's videos. If you're a visual learner, there's videos in YouTube that you can find on coping mechanisms and things like that. There's a beautiful book, Finding Meaning by David Kessler. That's an amazing book because there's 5 stages of grief, but he adds a sixth stage, which is the finding meaning stage. That book, I highly recommend it, anybody who's grieving. When we educate ourselves, we're able to say, okay, let me learn a little bit more about what is grieving, the effects that it has on the body physically. You become physically ill and sick,
Wow.
right? The mental, the emotions, the connection. So if you're not too good of a communicator, then maybe you can learn a little bit about grief and how do you communicate. So many videos, so many, there's always different ways to learn, because some people say I don't like to read. Then you have audio or Audible, which you can do it that way. No, 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 I don't like to listen to podcasts or Audible. Okay, maybe you could buy a book, or you could see a YouTube video, or join a support group, right?
Yeah.
Join a support group where you can, there's support groups for, not only for the person who's grieving, but there are support groups for the loved one, right? So meaning, if I have a friend who's grieving, but that's not my loss, but I'm still affected by my friend, I can join a group that it's of people that are supporters, right? So
Oh,
you can join a group. It's always about you having more compassion. Try to understand. If you don't understand everything, it's okay. It's very complex. Also, people go sometimes to family therapy together when the impact has been
yeah.
very impactful. They go to grief counseling as a family. Then there are other individuals that may do it individually. So there's many ways. What I would say is never say get over it. Never say, but what do you keep crying about? It's already been 5 years. Move on.
Right. Oh my
Never,
God.
never say that. And many people do that. After a few years, they're like, you're still that intensely upset. So be mindful that everybody process differently. I don't know if
And
anybody has any questions.
no, no, I haven't. I haven't. I would have. No, they're just at awe of your wisdom.
Aw.
So, talk a little bit about what stages of grief there are,
Yes, yes.
because I'm
So
not very familiar with that.
there's 5 stages of grief, and David Kessler added he introduced a sixth stage, which is the finding meaning stage. But the first 5 stages of grief, and I put a note here because I wanted to be very particular about this because it's important. I never like to misinform. So the first stage is deny. Oh, and just so everybody understands this, these stages, it doesn't mean that you you may not believe that these stages it's real. You may not, or you may believe in, like, meaning understand them and say, oh my god, I can see that in me. That doesn't mean you have to go in that order. Okay, so
Oh,
the
okay,
stages are
okay.
in 1 through 5, and then David Kessler has written about the sixth stage. But that doesn't mean they're not linear, right? So it's not like, oh, now I go through this because Coach Smiley said this, now I'm gonna wait for the second
Oh,
stage.
okay,
Not at all. These are
okay.
stages overall. I forget the person here, her name, who put the stages together, but in the interest of time, let me just give you the stages. So the first stage, so you can understand a little bit the type of grief, and the change, actually, the stage. When you first hear of a loss, you may experience the first stage, which is denial, right? And that's the stage where you feel numb,
Okay.
you feel in disbelief of the loss, you're in shock, you're like, what happened? And you're in denial. All of these stages, people can last in this stage for a long time. They can also go back and forth and jump from one to another, skip one, skip two.
Oh, really?
So it's, yes, yes, because it's human emotion.
Wow.
It's human emotion, right? So the first stage is denial. You feel numb. You can't believe it. You're in disbelief about the loss. The second stage is anger, right? You're experiencing a level of like frustration. You feel resentful at times. You might be even angry with the person who passed away. Like, you left me. You feel abandoned. You might be, angry with God, right? But this is the place in this stage where you're experiencing a lot of frustration or possibly resentment. You have unanswered questions. You're so upset. and you're very angry, and that may surface, right, where you are irritable, you're dismissive with people because you have this built anger, and maybe even anger with the person that passed, right? The third stage is bargaining. And that's where your wishing comes in. I wish it was different. I wish my sister Fran had gone sooner and found out about her cancer. I wish that I had done so and so. I wish that it could be different. And you feel, some people in the bargaining stage three, they feel guilty. I didn't spend enough time with my dad. Was I a good daughter? I wasn't there at the end. So you're bargaining. You're like, you wish that things were different than what the situation is. And some people last a long time in that phase of
Mhm.
wishful thinking, of just thinking, I wish it was different. I wish I could have done something different. I could have saved them. They may have guilt, right? Sometimes in car accidents, one survive. You have survival guilt, right? I wish it was me that had taken, driven, and not my dad who was at the wheel and I survived and he didn't. And it's hard. The bargaining stage could be very difficult. Then the fourth stage is the stage of depression, right? And this is where you may feel this deep sadness. You may feel like an emotionally heavy. You feel like you're watching TV, but you're really not even there watching it. You barely could get out of bed. You may not take showers. You may feel you don't want to see anyone, right? And when this stage, I'm very particular about this stage, because in this stage, I tell folks that if you need professional help, right, no shame in that, right? If you
Yeah.
need professional help, speak to your doctor, speak to getting going into counseling. Don't do it alone. Speak to people you trust. Speak about what you're feeling. Write down what you're feeling, because if you bottle everything in and isolate, the depression becomes more intensified. And then in the fifth stage, that's acceptance. And that's where a lot of people try to get to as quick as possible. And I always say, take your time. I know that when I've grieved on my own, there was a time where I don't want to feel this anymore. And then you start going out, you try to have fun, but you're really like feeling still upset, right? And not still, because it's not just still, it's just a process. So in acceptance, you acknowledge now the loss, right? You find a way to move forward with the loss. So these five stages don't necessarily mean that you have everything figured out about grief. This is just like
Yeah.
an outline to give you a sense. Most people go through these emotions. And then David Kessler introduced the sixth stage, which is the one that he calls finding meaning. And he wrote the book Finding Meaning. And this is where he emphasizes you, right, to find the meaning in the pain, to travel and accept the pain, but find the meaning, the connection, that you still have the connection and the memory with your loved one, and finding ways to honor that within the grieving process, right? It's so important. And I hope that that you understand that through these stages, and you can learn about the stages. There's books on it. You can really, it's not that you have to commit to that. So what I mean by that is that as a loved one, you may find that you look at the stages and you're like, oh, I see the behavior. I can see where they're at. Don't
Mm.
try to figure people out like that, because what happens is you can be accepting of your loved one's passing, and in the second year you go right back to denial.
Really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
because you start again feeling, I
Wow.
can't believe it. I can't believe my son passed. And all of a sudden, the holiday comes in, and all of a sudden, you
Wow.
feel right back at the beginning of when the loss happened. So that's why I'm saying this is for guidance and having a little bit of understanding of what's happening in your body, what's happening in your mind. Some people become very nauseous, some people get panic attacks. So these
Wow.
stages, they help you to navigate that. And then there's different types of grief, right? Remember I spoke about the anticipatory grief, and that's like
That's something I learned today. That's
yeah,
anticipate.
when
I
you
I
yeah,
only I thought the grief only started when the person passed away.
no,
I learned so much. I learned so
it
much from this.
starts early on when
Wow.
the person already is in that path. And I have to tell you something else, and for people that are watching, you can also be grieving. Anticipatory grief is before. So somebody's terminally ill and they've been ill terminally for 3 years, and then they start deteriorating. They're already changing, right? And your relationship is already changing. And
Yeah.
little by little, you may have a parent who has Alzheimer's, and they're living, and they're relatively healthy, but their mind, right? They're beginning to forget and whatever. You're already grieving that your mom is not the same way.
Wow.
So you already started what's called the anticipatory grief, right? Then you may be grieving the loss of, it's not by death, but your best friend started, right, ghosting you, and things are changing. So now you start grieving a little bit the loss of the way the relationship used to be. Some
Yeah.
people, when when they retire, they go through a period of grief because they were 30 years in a company or working. Now they're home and you're like, it should be
Wow.
fun. But they start feeling a little sadness of, they had their identity tied into the job and the friends that they had there. And then
Really?
they miss that person and the
Wow.
ritual and going to work, and they start feeling sad, and then they're grieving because there's a change, there's a loss, right? Loss of a job. People that lose their jobs and got terminated or laid off, and you see them sad, and you're like, what's going on? They're grieving. They just lost a job. Now, those types of grief, people are like, really? But we have to be
Yeah, like,
compassionate.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yes,
That's
yes. And then you have
interesting.
normal grief, which is the grief that, that we were talking about, the five
Yes.
stages and what you go through. But then there's complicated grief, and that's the grief that is very persistent, that you really are feeling. The complicated grief could be that there's trauma. You were taking care of a loved one that went through a lot, and you also experienced a lot of trauma. There was multiple losses back to back. That gives you complicated grief. Like my husband, in 2012, his parents both passed away in about 9 months apart.
Wow.
And for that family and us together and his sibling, it's losing both parents in the same year, months apart. That is very complicated grief. It was very, very intense, very difficult. And then you have disenfranchised grief, and that's the grief that usually society doesn't recognize and gives importance to, and the loss of a pet or a loss of an ex-partner. You already divorced him. How are you grieving? He's not in your life anymore. And society oftentimes doesn't give you a place for you to grieve of a pet or of someone who, you divorced your husband and it's been 10 years you're divorced. You learn of his passing. You can feel sad and you may go into this disenfranchised grief that they call. So
You
all
know
of
what?
this.
I am so glad you brought that up because I have often thought about that. I'm like, because this is, for example, me that I'm divorced, right? I was married to this person for 25 years, and I wonder if I ever found out, got whatever, got willing, we don't come to that. Would I feel anything? And now that you say that, it's like you grieve for that life that you had, that person, 25 years. That's a
Yes,
whole lot of birthdays and
yes,
Christmases and situations. Wow.
absolutely.
That is, I'm
Absolutely, and it's
learning so much.
important. It's Yes, it's so important. And the book Finding Meaning by David Kessler, I bought that book for myself as well as I recommend it to my clients. It's really good because it helps you. It even his book helps you, especially during the holiday season, finding meaning in that sixth stage, right? It's navigating your feelings, finding the meaning of the relationship you had with that loved one, and that it still exists. The person is not here physically, but your connection to them still exists.
Oh,
And
so
when Mhm.
it's not finding meaning of the death, it's finding meaning of their connection? Is that
Right,
am
of
I
yourself, of right, of what was that relationship with you, with you, right? It's finding the meaning. And some of us are like, why did it happen? Why did this happen? But you're finding meaning in what just happened, but more about the legacy the person has left, the
Wow.
life that you lived with them, their relationship, right? The relationship that you had with them, which was very, very special to you, and that you can still find meaning in within the loss. There's still messages there. There's still more to learn even after the person passed. I can share for me the people in my life and my pet that passed. I love them more now than I loved them when they existed because the love has continued to grow. You see
Wow.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
The love didn't just like stop and end because now my sister friend Maritza lives in heaven for me. That's where I feel and bolt, and my in-laws are there. No, our love is still there, our connection through the rituals that we do, through the memories, through their legacy that they left,
Yeah.
how they lived their life, how now I'm going to continue honoring them. And it's finding that in the grief that you're going through the different rituals. And you navigate through the pain, but in that book, David Kessler helps us to still navigate through the pain, but at the same time honoring the loved one and having this remembrance of their legacy. And now there's more meaning after they passed. It doesn't have to end with their passing. They are still significant. They're still part of your life, right? It's just that they're not here physically.
So, in wrapping this up, there's so much. There's still
I
so much to
know.
talk about, and
It's a very complex topic, and I hope that people practice self-compassion. They go into support groups if they
yeah,
need to, or individual counseling, and understand that it's challenging. I think that you have to give yourself time,
yeah,
and those that are around you, excuse me, is also understanding that other people may grieve differently. So neither one should be judging or pressing on one another to
okay,
move through the stages or through move through their grief quickly. You really have to give yourself time. And in giving time, there's a lot of pain. And sometimes we want to hurry through the process of healing. And I don't think you heal completely. Like the losses that I've had, that's there. It's just that I've learned to live my daily life moving forward, and I've learned to work on the pain. And I do believe that through the years the intensity of the
mm,
pain goes down a bit, but it's not that it goes away. It's just that you learn how to cope with it, and the intensity goes, it diminishes a bit. And then there are years that intensity comes back. That's why I'm saying you always have to check
I
in.
didn't know that. Wow, I really appreciate you explaining that part where the 5 stages of grief, and the number six one that David Kessler talks about also. But I appreciate you saying that and explaining that it can come back and you can start at one.
Yes, it can.
That's like wow, that really open up my mind and my eyes and my understanding. That's what I want to say. That I thought that, to me, I was part of those people after today that I thought you did denial, anger, bargaining, and so forth, and then you were done, and that's it. But to understand that 2 3 years can go, and then you can start at one, and you can that will help me understand when I go through it or when somebody else is going through it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Can
much.
I
Oh,
add, just for folks for
absolutely.
reference, the 5 stages were written and introduced by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, because I knew I had her name. And she has a great book also on death and dying. And
Okay.
she introduced the 5 stages of grief. And that's like a model framework of those 5 stages. And then David Kessler has a book, Finding Meaning, the sixth stage of grief. And that David really, I think he even worked with Elizabeth Ross on this too. And he offers insights, like I mentioned before, of healing, finding the meaning. But he talks a lot about the healing process and how do you find meaning within the loss, within the pain. And I just hope that individuals that are listening to us, wherever you're at in your grief process, know that you're not alone.
Yes.
Please connect with people that you can trust. If you need professional help,
Yeah.
it's important. If you need to go individual counseling, if you need family, as a group or in group work, but please don't isolate to the point where you shut down completely and put your walls up and you don't allow people to love on you and take care of you. And think about, I'll leave you with this last thought, a ritual that you can do, an exercise. You can think about, what would your loved one tell you if they could be here now or see you? What would they tell you as you're grieving, as you're upset, as you maybe
Yeah.
don't go to work for a few days because you're so tired? What would they say to you? You could even write it down, write a letter to them, and then think about, what would my dad advise me at this moment? because that helps you to feel connected to them and to maybe say, oh, whoa, let me work on this because dad would want me to do X, Y, and Z. Now be careful with that because some people say, and this is not good, they tell you, Maria, the person that passed, your dad wouldn't want you to be crying all day long. That is not correct. Because you have to allow people to express. So it's not
Correct.
about your loved one using your loved one and weaponizing that. It's more for you to
Oh,
think about how they care for you, how they loved you. Think of the sweet memories like that. But it's not about, oh, Maria, daddy wouldn't want you to cry all day. Of course,
yeah,
that they wouldn't want that, but you still have to go through that process. So I
correct.
hope that this is helpful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Oh, it's been wonderful, wonderful. And I know it won't be the last. So tell us, take a few minutes and let us know where can people find you?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, once again, thank you, Maria. I enjoy this so much. And whenever you want me back,
Oh,
I am more
absolutely.
than happy to be back. Um, I have my website, Smilie, Smilie, and I spell that because people spell it with a Y and it's IE, Smilie, Smiley Empowerment. Oh, there it is on the screen.com. That's my website. All my information is there. And on my social media handles, so I go as Smiley Empowerment on Facebook, here on Facebook, also on YouTube and on Instagram. You find me as Smiley Empowerment. All the links are there. You can also listen to my podcast, the Smiley Empowerment Podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, I am there. You can find me, and that's so good. We went globally. So I have people listening in
Yay.
India, in Africa, in the Philippines. So Smiley Empowerment, the podcast has done very well. It's been a year that I have the podcast. On TikTok, I'm
Wow.
doing lives, which Maria is one of the person who put me to say, girl, what are you waiting for? Because I go
Yes.
live on Instagram for more than 4 years or 4 years around teaching. On Instagram, I go live on Tuesdays, Martes de Empoderamiento, which is
Yes, I
all
like that.
Spanish, on Tuesdays at 7 in Smiley Empowerment on Instagram. And in English on Instagram, Empowerment, I go at 7 o'clock on Thursdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Instagram. On TikTok, I go live on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But there I'm known as Coach Smiley, Smilie.
That's what I like to call you. I like to call you Coach Smiley. I don't know. Ever since I made you, she's Coach. That's it. She's Coach. Coach Smiley. And
Yes.
that's what
And
I'm like.
I
That's
I
it.
ask I ask everyone to, wherever you see me in the platform, say hello. You could even tell me I saw you at Maria's podcast. Please say hello whenever you see me on the on the TikTok streets or Facebook. And also subscribe. It's free.
Yes.
Subscribe to my newsletter. If you go on the platform, or even on the website, but on Instagram or TikTok, when you go to the profile, the link is there. You can hit the link and subscribe, because every Wednesday when you subscribe to Smiley Empowerment, the newsletter, you get tips from me on a weekly basis on Wednesday. I don't spam. It's weekly tips every Wednesday. So join the newsletter. Also, I have their digital products that I designed to help
Yes.
you about self-love, planning, and I have other ideas, but for now I have a few digital products there, journals you could download on the phone, on your tablet, and you can work on it on the go. And it's in both English and Spanish. So my journals, my digital products are there.
Wow.
Also the shop, like your Wear Your Crown. I have
Yeah,
it here.
oh, there you go. I like
I
that.
have the hoodie to this too. So I
Oh,
designed this because especially for women. So my merch on the shop, and it's all in the link in the bio also, I love to design things to remind us of being positive. So I got the hoodie to this, that it's a match. Also, in the shop you can find different merch that for to gift yourself for
yeah.
self-love, but also you can gift it, like this is a nice mug for teenagers that are right, reminding them wearing your crown doesn't mean for you to be pretentious. What I love about that is self-empowerment,
Yeah.
self-worth. You have your crown. You are
Woo!
queen. So get the hoodie, get the
Yeah.
mug, gift it to someone. And I say all of this because even when you're grieving, sometimes, and it's not because I'm plugging my own merch and motivational
Exactly.
products, but I also feel that when we're grieving and we see pretty things through our eyes, you get it makes you feel a little better. It's pretty. Look, this I have, it's not that I sell it, it's someone else, but I, when I'm feeling very down, I use things that look pretty. I like to see that because it makes me feel better. Things that have positive messages. It's on my desk,
Yeah.
right? So when you're grieving, you can also look for items, things. You can do graphics, you can
Yeah.
draw, color, adult coloring, because color, it's vibrant. Music, select music to
Oh,
raise
yeah.
your vibration, to make you feel
Yes.
better, right? The favorite music of the loved one, or if it's going to get you too sad and you want to get out of a little of the sadness, something that was joyful. So my positive merch in my shop is the self-love shop. It's all about elevating you to feel better, to get
Yeah.
empowered, to self-love, to self-care. So I hope you guys check it out. And my YouTube channel also, Smiley Empowerment, and the podcast. I think there's great resources for, complimentary for free. And then for small investments, I also have items there to support you
And
in your journey.
and and how about your group? Your
Oh, the
group.
Boss Chicas, I
Yes,
have.
I like that. I like.
Thank you. I have the Boss Chicas Club Circle of Trust, and that is a club that was born out of my own depression. Because
Wow.
years ago, when I mentioned that there was my sister that passed away, she was like my sister, and then I was ghosted and not supported by my former best friend that we're not no longer best friends. I was so lost. I felt so lonely. Even that I had friends, I felt lonely. So the Boss Chica came out from, my mom is my first Boss Chica. She's a single mom, raised us in the 80s, and my mom showed me what a Boss Chica is from young, which is not about only being a boss, because some people say, oh, I don't have a business, I'm not a boss. No, my mom showed me from very young that she had to be the boss of her life. She had to hustle.
Wow.
She had to do so many things. She was fierce. She was compassionate. So now, when I was feeling so lonely and grieving and feeling so lost years after, I said, I want to have a community besides the Smiley Empowerment community of women that we get together. I coach them virtually because after COVID, it had to turn into that as opposed to physically, but I coach them every 2 weeks virtually. I design a 90-day program of transformation within the club that they do for 12 weeks. And then we travel together.
That's
And
very
they're in
cool.
different states. I have ambassadors in different states. We're going to do our first retreat of Boss Chicas Club Circle of Trust, possibly in April of next year. So this is a club for women to help one another get coached as a group. And then there's 2 sessions individual, as well as learning from each other, bonding, creating that sisterhood, and then traveling together and leaning on one another. So the
Oh,
Boss
that's
Chicas
good.
Club Circle of Trust, you can learn more on the website. Um, more information on how you can join. And now I'm going to be interviewing folks because we already have a set group. We started in June, and the ladies are like, this is amazing, but now if anybody's interested, send me a message and we can talk to see if it's a good fit,
Yeah.
right? To see if it's a good fit for you for the club. There's different levels of participation in the club, but we can talk about it. It's a beautiful experience, and it came out from grief and also the inspiration of my mom being my first Boss Chica who
Oh, great.
everything. Yes.
Oh, I'm excited. Coach, again, thank you so much for spending this time with us. And this is going to be on YouTube. Make sure you like, you share, you comment, support Smileys. We put the website there, and on YouTube at the bottom, I'll put her information. In the next few days, look for the podcast being uploaded. So we will catch you on the next time. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you so much. You have a great night.